Hello, I'm Dylan.
I'm Kiyan.
This is Just Your Doctor.
Delayed reaction.
That show where we forget the past 3 seasons.
That's not funny, by the way. It's actually really depressing when you know what it's a reference to.
Yeah.
Then again, the most messed up things are always the funniest things.
Wow, you're a terrible person.
Yeah, I know. This week we we finished up the War Games and the Second Doctor.
Mr. Troughton is done. Rest in peace.
He's not dead yet. That's not for
That's
another
true,
20
but
years.
He will be.
Well, the Second Doctor's dead.
Yeah, his character is dead, but as an actor, he's not yet dead. Well, show-wise,
now
he is dead now, as in 2015, he's dead, but... You know what? Just forget everything I'm saying, because I apparently don't know what I'm talking about. The War Games.
When we last left the Doctor and co., Jamie had just been shot.
And surprisingly, none of those people with them nor Jamie actually ended up dying. They all just got knocked out. Turns out the guns have a stun mode.
Yep. So yeah, it kind of makes sense that we didn't count some of those people on the death count.
Mm-hmm.
I guess it kind of all just worked out for us. But yeah, so they take Jamie and the other guys to be questioned / held / reprocessed.
Yeah.
Zoe and Carsters, I guess, want to just jump them right then and there, save them, but the Doctor says no. Because
he's smart. And they all have guns, and the Doctor, Zoe, and Carstairs don't. And they don't want to give themselves away, I guess.
Carstairs has a gun. It's not loaded.
That's true. I guess.
Could use it as a bludgeoning tool.
He could throw it at them.
In a throwback.
Reign of Terror.
Right, so they take Jamie to be they find out Jamie had never been processed to begin with.
Right.
And this further deepens suspicions between the security chief and the war chief. But yeah, they take Jamie in to be questioned. The security chief, that's his name, right? Yeah, the security chief takes Jamie in to be questioned in the same place where Zoe was earlier. Meanwhile, the other two or three guys, I think, I don't know, get sent away to be processed again.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, like the war chief and the security chief are further even more suspicious of each other. Now, and they do confirm. They have this discussion, and they do confirm that they're on a planet. So last week we didn't know where they were, if they were in some sort of alternate dimension on some planet somewhere. But no, they do confirm that they're on a planet.
And they also confirm that the war chief is a Time Lord. That was in the first 3 minutes of episode 6. The security chief is talking to the war chief, and he says, "You brought your people, the Time Lords, here."
Yeah, and so that thing that was heavily hinted at last time, that's what happens.
Yeah. And it gets played up a lot in episode 10, but we'll get there.
Yeah, it was hinted at before, never explicitly stated, though I don't see how you wouldn't realize it, but I guess we're just going to spell it out that, the war chief betrayed his own people to help out the alien race that's orchestrating the games.
Right, and
which is never named, I think.
Yeah, and they hadn't mentioned the Time Lords up until this point. I don't think they'd named them the Time Lords until now.
No, they hadn't.
So that is officially canon now. If you ever wanted to know where that term came from,
it's
the War
this.
Games.
Yeah.
Also in this episode, the Doctor mentions that he stole his TARDIS and ran away from his own people, but...
Was it this episode? I thought it was later.
No, it was episode 6, when he's talking to the War Chief. Or it's episode 7. Or 6.
Okay, yeah.
But it's when he's talking to the War Chief, and the War Chief mentions that he ran away, and he's like, "You're not too different from me, Doctor."
Yeah, I think that was next episode. But yeah, I don't know. I don't think it's ever explicitly stated or confirmed or denied one way or the other who this alien race that's orchestrating the games is. You do find out their purpose later, but I just assumed they were all of one race, like the security chief, the warlord, pretty much everyone else.
They're not named. The wiki mentions that when they reappear in one of the prose pieces, they're just all collectively referred to as the warlords, just to avoid confusion with other races. But, I mean, it's never explicitly named what species they are.
Yeah, they are one race, though, right? Like, they're not some sort of coalition or anything.
No, yeah, they're all
that
one
worked
race.
out great in the Daleks' master plan. Yeah. So they also, I noted that they also explain why they didn't connect any zones after 1917, which is because they feared technology, that they feared the advancement of technology after 1917.
Yeah.
Don't know why, since they have way better technology than like anything from the past 100 years, but better be safe than sorry. So that's what they did. And I guess that's an excuse because obviously they don't know what future wars are going to take place. The writers don't, that is.
Yeah.
But it didn't feel too shoehorned in. I'm glad they explained it in some sort of way that kind of made sense.
It was vaguely logical.
Yeah. So the Doctor realizes that he has to go rescue Jamie and the other guys.
Yep.
So they do so. They sneak around the complex, which I guess they know it like the back of their hands by now. They've been there for a while. And it turns out there's this one, there's a removable wall, I guess. I forget exactly.
It's powered by magnets.
Yeah.
Throwback to the space pirates.
They have some handy scissors and tape that they use for something. I don't know why.
And the sonic screwdriver, which makes an appearance.
Right, again.
The second Doctor's final scene.
Really shoehorning in the sonic screwdriver here.
They needed a power source to break the magnet. I don't know.
They also used it on that guy's gun. I guess they kind of just forgot about it for a while, and now they're... Yeah.
The recorder never showed up. I just realized. That's sad.
Yeah.
Which we'll talk about.
No, it's not. It's kind of sad. So they end up removing one of the panels on the wall, and it leads into the reconditioning chamber.
Yeah.
Where the resistance soldiers are being deconditioned, but the Doctor crashes that party in a very comic way. The chief scientist from before is about to recondition someone, and the Doctor just comes over and like taps him on the shoulder, and he's like, "I think I can help with that." And he looks over and he's like, "Oh God!" Yeah, very cartoon-like. And that's actually something I've noticed with the second Doctor more than the first Doctor, is that his the way Troughton acts is both with his expressions, his body movements, and his and the way he delivers lines are a lot more comedic and cartoon-like.
Yeah.
Which is interesting. It's not something Hartnell did, and it's not something any other actor on the show really does. Or at least consistently.
I've heard the second Doctor described as the cosmic hobo, so which I think is actually a fitting description. Given his clothes that appear to be like a size too big and his overly comedic timing.
I guess. So I think this is another instance where they cut away and don't show how they overpower the scientists and the guards, but they do. They do? They show it?
Yeah. Because they open the panel and then they like knock out the guards when they come in. And then the guards run away, because that's how they know that they were all trapped, quote unquote, in that room.
Oh.
And then the security chief, when he brings his guards and they go in and they're not there, he's like, "They escaped with a space-time machine, War Chief." And
he's not the first Doctor.
And the War Chief is like, "I'm sorry to rain in your parade, but they just walked out through this panel in the wall, see?"
That was actually pretty funny, yeah.
The security chief is like, "Go to the landing bay, now, go!" To the security guards, and they go. Meanwhile, in the barn, in the Civil War, Von Vyk.
Yeah, Von Vyk.
Von Vyk. It's really hard to say.
Not really, it's just Von Vyk. Von Vyk.
Von Viking.
Or Von, I mean, it's spelled Von Wyk. I mean, I guess it's German.
It's German, Von Vyk.
Yeah.
But presumably uses another name in the Civil War zone, now that I think about it. But they just never say what it is. Because it wouldn't make sense for him to be Von Vyk in the...
Yeah.
But anyway, so he somehow convinces Private Moore that he's who's guarding Von Vyk.
He wasn't really a major character before this. He's just kind of there.
That he's still fighting in the war and that Von Vyk is his superior officer. So when all the rebels come back, minus Dr. Jamie and Carstairs, who stay back to get to steal the reconditioning machine, basically.
Right. Yeah, Zoe and everyone else got sent back.
So they show up, and then Private Moore's about to shoot the commander of the rebels, but then they have a scuffle, and then Von Weich's about to shoot the commander of the rebels, but then Private Moore shoots him, so Von Weich is now dead.
Yeah. And this actually was a point of confusion for me. I thought Zoe and everyone else was going to go back to Civil War era. And later on, they showed up in World War I era. So did they ever explain that, or did they ever say, okay, we're going to go to the Civil War era, and then we're going to reconvene in World War I era, or did they just kind of have that be an assumption?
Well, I mean, I know that later on they went to the World War I era because the TARDIS was in that area, and that's why they went to the chateau there.
Yeah. Well,
and I know here they actually mentioned that they were sending the rebels back to 1917, and then they showed up in the Civil War zone. I was like, well, now I'm really confused. That's not 1917.
Yeah, I was just confused as to where Zoe was going. But, I mean, she shows up in World War I era, so it resolves itself pretty quickly.
So anyway, the Doctor, they stole the reconditioning machine, and the Doctor took some of these capsules full of gas while he was there that he is currently holding on to. And then when they get into one of the Sidrats... they actually named them in episode 7 in the next episode. It's Side Rat, actually. I don't know if you noticed that. But yeah, so they get in, they steal the control mechanism from the outside, the directional control unit from the outside, and then when they're in the Side Rat, the War Chief has them surrounded and then starts shrinking the internal dimensions of the machine, and then episode 6 ends.
And he tells them they have 30 seconds to stop what they're doing, or else they'll
30 seconds to come out, or he's going to destroy them.
Yeah. So episode 7 starts exactly with that, and the Doctor does agree to come back out, so he does, and they haven't dematerialized yet or anything. They're still they're still at the control center. So the Doctor, this is the first of many times where someone pretends to be either shifting allegiances or about to cooperate, and they're just like, nope. Yeah, the Doctor uses one of the smoke bomb things and adjusts the control mechanism.
And bolts, basically.
Yeah, the magnets.
Yeah, they looked really like magnets in episode 7.
Because they were.
Probably. Special effects budget, yo. But anyway, so they materialize in the barn, right? Do they go to the barn?
Do they?
I don't
no,
know.
They don't.
Oh, no, they go to the Roman zone, apparently, and then they walk to the 1917 zone, where they're meeting up with Zoe. Oh, yeah, because then there was the scene where they sent out a message saying that they're renegades on the loose, and they didn't want to immediately go back to the 1917 zone because they didn't want them to know where they are. So they decided they'd walk to the 1917 zone from the Roman zone, and they send out the message that the fugitives on the run. So they get spotted by a machine gun nest in the 1917 zone. They get fired at, only for Zoe and her resistance group to conveniently show up and
save them.
Yeah. Kill some of them soldiers too. But,
yeah, they get taken back to the chateau, and who's there but Smythe?
No surprise.
Yeah.
But anyway, the Warlord also shows up, finally, after having been mentioned for 4 episodes.
Right, I think it was that the security chief called him in after becoming overly suspicious of the war chief.
And,
something like that.
Yeah, the Warlord just looks like Steve Jobs.
Yeah. You shouldn't have even mentioned that, because, you mentioned that to me, like, midway through these 5 episodes, and I was like, yeah, he does.
Now you can't unsee it.
Yep.
Once you see that he looks like Steve Jobs, there's no going back.
This is the point, also, where I started to get pretty fed up with the security chief's voice. Was it annoying to you? It was just...
No.
Really? In my opinion, it was overly robotic, and his inflection was just odd, and it's not like anyone else talked like this. It's not like they were robots. They're some sort of other species, and it just stood out to me as being really annoying because no one else was like this, and
I don't know.
I didn't like it.
It didn't annoy me.
At least I could understand him. At least he wasn't the Ice Warriors, the computer, the cyber controller,
the quarks, the crotons.
Oh, yeah.
You must obey. We will kill
Protons
you.
weren't too bad.
Who is this man?
The war chief and the security chief are both trying to convince the warlord that the other is suspicious and should be dealt with. But the warlord sort of breaks up their dispute, and not permanently, but for the time being. And what did I even want to say? He notifies them, or he gets them back on to track with what they're supposed to be doing, which is killing the doctor.
Yeah. Speaking of the doctor, Smythe has sent out a distress signal only to be immediately shot by the resistance members, so he dies.
Right, because he's about to execute the doctor, but then he gets a call from Central Command telling him that the doctor has stolen the reconditioning machine and that he can't be killed because he's the only one who knows where it is. She's like, no. So he stops the execution and then has killed himself.
Yeah. And then the war chief is like, Smythe was an idiot. He shouldn't have tried to kill the doctor. But anyway, they try to...
That's actually interesting, though, because I like how Smythe was set up to be the main antagonist, or like you thought he would be a major antagonist at the beginning of the serial, and he was for a while, but then it's revealed that like there's more behind the scenes, and
his want for revenge took over in the end. Was his undoing.
Well, yeah, or it was just sheer bad luck. But no, I liked how like it evolved into something more than what it originally was.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Anyway, so the doctor is able to reprogram the machinery in Smythe's office, and he sets up a time barrier around the chateau. So
right, with the mist.
Anyone who doesn't know about the fact that there's multiple time zones can't get through the mist, which wasn't really explained before in the serial, and I thought it was kind of shoehorned in, to be honest. It felt shoehorned in.
Well, it makes sense considering that pretty much no one was able to...
except Lady Jennifer.
Well, Jennifer and Carsters, like we said before, were sort of deconditioned by the doctor, and Zoe and Jamie.
Yeah, but when Lady Jennifer was introduced, she said she drove through a mist and then she ended up in the middle of no man's land. That was like one of her lines, was the fact that she remembered driving through a mist and then ending up in no man's land.
Well, maybe you just forget. I don't know. I just assume that like when you drive through the mist or go through the mist in any fashion, your sort of sense of time and perception is just... God, why am I blanking on words I want to say? Is distorted.
I guess, but it was weird. Anyway,
I wasn't bothered by it.
The doctor reveals that he can reprogram the deconditioning machine to affect large people.
Large people, yes.
A large amount of people at once. And at that moment, a Sid Rat shows up, captures the doctor, takes back the deconditioning machine, and leaves.
Yeah.
And now everything goes to pot, so to speak. Everything is downhill from here.
Yeah.
That long pause to remember the plot of episode 8 through 10.
Well, there were those funny scenes with Jamie. Yeah, so now that the doctor's gone, basically the resistance group wanted to get Arturo Villa, who's from the Mexican Civil War, I believe, in on their plan.
I wrote down all the wars that were represented on the map.
What were they?
Okay, well, there was a Crimean...
I'm curious.
Okay, so there was the 1905 Russo-Japanese War, World War I, the 30 Years' War, the Crimean War, the Roman War, some generic Roman war, they didn't say which, the American Civil War, the Boer War, which is the one in South Africa, the Mexican Civil War, some generic Greek war, the Peninsular War, and the English Civil War.
Where did you get all of those? Was it like
on the map?
On the map.
Because there was the map when they were when they were staging all the attacks to get all the security guards drawn out.
Yeah.
The map was labeled with all the wars.
That's interesting.
So I decided to just write it down because I was interested to know what wars are there. So,
yeah, what were we talking about? Oh, right. So they need to get Arturo Villa on their side because apparently he leads one of the biggest resistance groups in the war games. So they do. I don't remember.
I mean, he does also. He assaults the compound because he thinks it's a trap, and then Zoe's like, "No, no, it's not a trap." And then since Carstairs has gone off to I don't remember where, I think to go recruit one of the other resistance groups, and he's left Jamie in command. I guess Jamie ends up convincing Arturo Villa that they're gathering all the resistance groups to assault the main compound.
Right, Jamie dresses up in this extravagant costume and tries to convince Arturo Villa, and Zoe has to whisper in his ear like what to say to him or whatever. I thought it was pretty funny.
And meanwhile, while all this is going on, the war chief the doctor's been interrogated by the security chief, and he's refusing to cooperate, basically.
So the war chief steps in, and he's like, no, I'll handle this, and which even further widens the rift between them.
Yeah. And then, so they do that, and the war chief reveals that they're both indeed Time Lords, and that...
Yeah. If you hadn't already guessed, the Doctor's a Time Lord.
When the security chief leaves, the war chief tries to convince the Doctor to work with him to become basically rulers of the galaxy, and the Doctor says, no, that's wrong. Which I guess we'll talk more about when we get to his retrospective at the end. But
yeah, I didn't know if the war chief was planning on overthrowing the warlord either way, because the Doctor showing up there was an accident.
Yeah, I think he was planning on overthrowing the warlord.
Just wanted to recruit the Doctor's help because
the Doctor can help him.
Because
the Doctor can help him build side rats.
Yeah.
Because you find out later they have a critical flaw in the design. But
so the Doctor obviously refuses.
But then the war chief reveals that they'll both be killed if they don't agree to help the warlord. So the Doctor's like, okay, I guess. So I mean, yeah, that's kind of the end of that discussion.
But little do they know, the security chief is recording all of this, which you find out later.
Yeah, you'll find that out for episode 9. And then we're still in episode 8. The Doctor.
Ooh.
Yes.
Okay. Why did I write this? I wrote moral ambiguity, but why? It was something the war chief said. But why? It was something that really stood out. How am I not remembering this?
Well, I'll just mention a silly note I made where a side rat appears in the barn because the doctor tells because they're all in the barn. The resistance movement had decided that the best way to attack the main compound was to draw out all the security guards and then attack it when there was few to none security guards in the compound. So they've staged like minor attacks in all the time zones, killing off some soldiers along the way, I might add. In all of the wars except the American Civil War, which they leave to lost, and they go to the barn there, and then the Doctor contacts them and tells them to send only the leaders to the base and that he'll help them there. So a side rat appears, and then Arturo Villa is like, no, I'll stay behind because they want to leave someone behind. And then Carstairs is like, what, are you scared of this? And he's like, Arturo Villa is never scared. I shall lead the way. And then Carstairs ends up going in first anyway. So I made a note about that. I was like, haha, Carstairs, well.
Yeah, meanwhile, they've pretty much just forgotten about Lady Jennifer. Essentially, she doesn't show up again.
She's probably tending to the sick and wounded in the American Civil War zone. Still.
Maybe.
Not that it matters often what happens in episode, 10 so.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't remember why. Okay, moving on. Yeah, at the end, they take the side rat back to Central Command, and the Doctor's there, and he's like, oh, thank goodness you guys are here. Come with me. And they take 2 steps, and they're ambushed.
Yeah, and then the war chief is like, thank you, Doctor, a perfect little package. And the Doctor just had this total look of defeat on his face. This total look of he had lost. And this is the part in the serial where I just started dreading watching the next episodes because I knew it was coming. You know, you knew the Doctor was going to leave. You knew that Jamie and Zoe were probably going to leave.
Yeah, well, we knew Jamie was going to leave.
Yeah.
We mentioned that in the other episode that will have gone out yesterday when this is out.
But at that point, I was like, wow, the Doctor is just... I think at that point, the Doctor knew that this was his final adventure and that the only way he was going to end this was with him dying. Or at least losing someone.
He did try and make a last-ditch effort right near the end, I feel like. Right near the end.
I think the one in the Time Lord's base was a setup. And we'll talk about that when we get there, but...
Well, I don't know about that. I do think he kind of knew it was... Yeah, we'll talk about that.
So episode 9, Arturo Villa is pretty mad that the Doctor has betrayed them.
Understandably.
Yeah, but he has a pretty inflammatory personality too.
Yeah, and he kind of just wants to shoot everyone.
Yeah. Like, actually, because later his bullets fly at 90-degree angles, and I made a note about that. But, the Doctor is talking with the War Chief.
Right, they imprison everyone else.
Yeah, and he's talking with the War Chief, and he mentions that he's impressed that he has dimensional control over the side rats without reducing the life of the time control.
And then the War Chief's like, well, actually...
And the Doc's like, oh, so you haven't fixed that problem. So they're all going to be useless in a couple years now. And the War Chief is like, yes.
And that's when the Doctor realizes he just wanted to enlist his help for his TARDIS.
Yes.
Maybe also slightly for his... If the Doctor was actually willing to cooperate, yeah, he'd be a powerful ally. Mm-hmm. But more so for the TARDIS, I assume. Yeah.
So... what even happens?
Did you notice that
Anyway.
The War Chief's sideburns
turned into his mustache type thing?
No, I was going to say they varied like in their intensity. No, not their intensity, but in their length. Not their in their thickness. No, not their sometimes they looked more shaved than other times. There.
No.
You didn't notice that?
No.
It would happen.
It happened, wow. Did you notice that the necklace he was wearing was the same as Zephon's from the Daleks' Master Plan?
No.
Yeah, neither did I. I just found that out when I was reading the wiki.
Where they saved on props budget.
Yeah, by using a prop from like 4 seasons before.
Hey, maybe they meet in the expanded universe. Maybe
the War Chief only shows up once again in the expanded universe, and it's in prose.
Okay, well maybe it's canon that they met, and like there's nothing about it.
I'm surprised the War Chief doesn't show up in the audio dramas, to be honest.
Yeah, he's like one of the few characters who should show up again and doesn't. Yeah. Meanwhile, the Croton... No.
You must obey.
Yeah, maybe the War Chief went on adventures with Zephon.
Well, I mean... Anyway, the security chief is like, you know what? We'll just wipe out the resistance with a neutron bomb. Which he actually explained in episode 8, but the Doctor explains this to the resistance group in episode 9, and Arturo Villa is like, he's just lying to protect his own skin! Kill him!
But they don't do that. They actually send everyone to be conditioned. Which the Doctor's going to be in charge of, because he has gotten in with the Warlord on the fact that... they need to fix the reconditioning machines, and the Doctor can do it better than anyone else.
We should mention that the security chief was supposed to imprison the Doctor, and he decided to leave the Doctor with all the Resistance members, knowing probably the Doctor would be killed by them for his betrayal. And then this pisses off the War Chief, understandably, and the War Chief saves him from Arturo Villa's iron grip around his neck. They took their guns away, remember? He doesn't have his gun at this point, yet.
Oh, yeah.
So yeah, the Doctor's in charge of the reprocessing.
So they start doing that, and Jamie's first to be reprocessed, and the Doctor subtly hints that he should just go along with it, because he didn't actually fix the machine. It's part of his plan. So Jamie realizes this, and pretty much everyone else realizes this too, except when Arturo Villa's turn comes around. The doctor's like, now you are back in Mexico fighting the Civil War, and Arturo Villa's like, what? No, I'm not. What are you talking about?
Your machines have no power over me!
And then, I don't know, I guess they knocked out the guards during this. I didn't notice it because that's when the doctor just flat out explains, not in a hushed tone, not in a whisper, not subtly, he just says it to Arturo Villa. He just explains the plan. I guess they knocked out the guards or something, or overpowered
Yeah, that's what
them?
I assumed.
Did they show it, or did I just miss it, or what?
I don't think they showed it.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, I don't know.
It was probably in the background. But then the doctor's like, yeah, I didn't fix the machine because I was helping us escape. And Arturo Villa's like, oh.
Thanks, Arturo.
Damn it, Arturo.
So yeah, meanwhile, the security chief is going through the footage, not footage, but going over the recordings he took of the war chief, and he finds out that the war chief was planning on overthrowing the warlord.
Yep.
And he's like, well, crap.
And then there was this humorous scene where the war chief comes in and is like, you've made a terrible mistake, security chief, leaving the doctor with the resistance movement. How will the warlord react? And the security chief turns around and is like, I think you've made a terrible mistake, war chief. And then he plays the recording and he's like, I wonder how the warlord will respond to this. Guards, take him away. So everything is coming to a head, so to speak, coming to a boil. So the doctor reveals his plan to escape. They're gonna make for the landing bay, I think. That was the plan, right? Well, they're gonna get the guns first.
Yeah. So they have that brawl in the
landing bay.
Was that in the landing bay? Well,
yes.
There was one before that too, when they were doing something or the other, where they reconvened with the war chief.
Yeah, so the war chief is taken. Yeah, the war chief is taken to be a prisoner, and they rescue him, and then the doctor realizes that the war chief was under guard and not being escorted, so to speak, as a free man. So they decide that the war chief will be good collateral because everyone in the war zones doesn't know the war chief has basically been deposed. And so the war chief can still end the war games.
Which he does. He sends out a message telling them to disregard the previous message from the warlord, that the war games are still going to go on. Tells everyone that the warlord's new order is to cancel the war games.
Yep, and then he also shoots the security chief.
Yeah, security chief dies.
Which becomes important later, soonish. And
he also, at some point during this, reveals that, I don't know if we mentioned this actually, that the side rats are actually almost dead. Yeah.
There's only like one or two that are still working.
Yeah.
So they decide, all right, now that we've ended the war games, we're going to go to the landing bay. We're going to make a break for it.
And also get everyone back to their own times.
Yeah, and the doctor realizes at this point that the only way... And in a pretty depressing scene, actually, realizes that the only way he can send everyone back to their own times is to call in the Time Lords.
Right. Which you don't find out that's what he's doing until a little later, but he does reveal that he can't do it on his own, so he's going to have to call in someone.
Right. So he makes this little cube, which contains all the information about the war games.
Yeah.
And he plans to send it off to the Time Lords from the landing bay.
But the war chief is like, oh, you can't do that, Doctor. We're renegades. They're not going to like that.
Yeah, you know what they'll do to us, Doctor. And the doctor's like, I have no choice, war chief.
So
this is it.
Yeah, so the war chief is like, well, I'm having no part in this. So he tries to make a break for it. But right before he can get into one of the side rats, he's confronted by the warlord, and he tries to make a bunch of excuses about why he should
live.
Or just get the hell out.
But the warlord is having none of that, so he takes the war chief away and kills him.
Yeah.
Presumably, he off-screen regenerates, as revealed later in prose, but...
Like the doctor did before with the scene with the smoke bombs, the war chief is like, well, I can explain. The security chief was, and then he makes a break for it and he gets shot.
Yeah. In the process revealed, he regenerates off-screen into the war chief 2.
The war chief 2?
The second war chief, whatever naming scheme you prefer, I suppose. But he never appears again, sadly. I think he should, to be honest. But we'll talk about that when we finish the summary, because what happens next in the whole next episode is very important.
Right.
We got to get it right.
So, the Doctor, Jamie, Zoe, and Carsters leaving Arturo Villa and the other guys behind because the Time Lords are going to go.
Yeah, well, the Doctor says, this is where we say goodbye to Jamie and Zoe. Because he's got to make a break for it. Because he knows once the Time Lords show up, he's basically done.
Yeah.
Arturo Villa doesn't want to let him go. Still suspicious of the Doctor.
I would be, too. I mean, not as much now that he just saved everyone. But, I mean, when you think about it, Villa and the Doctor never really...
saw eye to eye, so to speak.
Yeah, they never really interacted before. And his first impression of the Doctor was a backstabbing traitor, so...
Yeah.
I can understand where he's coming from. Plus, he's a trigger-happy maniac, so...
And Jamie and Zoe say that if the Doctor is leaving, then they're going with him and that they're not leaving him. Yeah, which I thought was...
pretty sad considering what happens later, but...
Yeah, and Jamie's like, if anyone's coming for you, Doctor, just let me at him. And
the Doctor does agree to that, so he takes him with him.
So they go to the 1917 zone and they try to get to the TARDIS, and they get to the TARDIS just as the episode ends.
We should mention that Carsters, everyone's being sent back to their own time, so Carsters sort of disappears.
He wants to go find Lady Jennifer. So he asks to go with the Doctor just to go back to the 1917 zone so he can find Lady Jennifer.
Yeah, and then...
he ends up, being dematerialized back to wherever, and then...
because everyone's being sent back to their own...
and then Zoe asks what's happening, and he's like, it's the Time Lords.
And we get some slow motion. I think this is the first slow motion in the entire show.
I made a note of that. I was like, slow-mo?
And they slowed down their voices, too, which was
well, you gotta go all out. I mean, if you're gonna do slow-mo, you gotta slow down the voices.
Yeah, I guess it's kind of cheesy.
And
then again, this show is really cheesy.
The Doctor has his hand on the key when episode 9 ends. He's having a hard time. He's like struggling to move at that point.
They all are.
And
except Jamie.
For some reason.
Did you notice Jamie just walked up to the TARDIS normally?
In episode 10, you find out that the Time Lords are putting a force field around them, and the Doctor says if you concentrate, you can break it. And
maybe Jamie just has really good concentration all the time.
Yeah, it's a superpower. But they get into the TARDIS and they escape, sort of. Kind of.
I do want to, before we get into what happens next, I do want to mention Carsters, though, because I thought he was going to be a companion. I was like, Carsters is for sure going to be a companion, because we did a good job of not mentioning this throughout season 6, but we both knew Jamie was going out here.
Yeah.
So, I thought Carsters was going to, I assumed Zoe was going out too. She does. But yeah, I thought Carsters was going to be the replacement, but I guess not.
You think they'd introduce a new companion in the regeneration episode?
Maybe. I don't know. It's plausible.
I guess.
But
I'm trying to think if it was done in the reboot before. Because those are the only episodes I obviously have any experience to draw from. I mean, not as far as I can tell.
I liked Carsters, though.
Yeah, Carsters was a good character.
Yeah, like we were mentioning last episode, he and Lady Jennifer were pretty fleshed out despite being, one serial characters. But anyway, they make their break for it with the TARDIS, and they do escape, but not for long.
They land in an ocean, and then they sink.
Did you notice that the footage of them landing
was reused from Fury from the Deep?
Yep.
Yes, and also the space footage was reused from Web of Fear.
Really? I didn't notice that.
I noticed that because there was webs covering the TARDIS. I was like, what? Look, I even made a note of it. The Web of Fear? Question mark.
Yeah.
But anyway, so they land in an ocean, and the Doctor claims that nothing can get into the TARDIS, and then some water starts seeping in, and then he's like, oh no, it's the Time Lords. So they escape again into space, and then the Time Lords basically speak into the TARDIS and say that the Doctor has nowhere to escape to, and it's better if he just comes of his own accord.
Right.
So he tries to make another emergency temporal jump and lands in some swamp somewhere where a crocodile is outside. And at that point, he's like, guys, it's not worth it.
And sometime during all of this, previously, Jamie and Zoe everyone but Jamie and Zoe specifically were wondering why the Doctor was so afraid of the Time Lords, because he is a Time Lord.
Yeah, and they assumed they'd be his friends.
But sometime during this, he reveals that he actually stole a TARDIS and went renegade, and the Time Lords have complete power over space and time, obviously, and they're also immortal, But but he didn't like the fact that they just sit on their planet and observe things, and he wanted to go out and have adventures, so he stole a TARDIS. And
he thought it was wrong that they didn't do anything. And we'll get to that because the Doctor makes this great speech later on. But so the Doctor gets taken to the planet, and you find out that the Warlord is on trial. And you think maybe just for the next 10 minutes that the Doctor might only have to be there as a witness for the Warlord's trial.
I didn't think that at all.
I did. I felt like that was the way it was going. It was like, oh, he's just going to be witness, and then you'll leave and get like shot in the back or something by the Warlord. Because then the security guards show up to rescue the Warlord. Because the Doctor was a witness in the Warlord's trial. And they eventually decide the Warlord is guilty, and they sentence him to be killed, basically.
The Warlord actually made a good point. He said a few points in his defense, and one kind of hit home with me, which is that obviously they kidnapped the humans into fighting the fake wars, right? Mm-hmm. But in his defense, he said, well, they would have killed each other anyway. So aren't they killing each other for a greater cause with what I was trying to do? Which, I don't know, that kind of struck home with me. I mean, obviously, when you look at it, it doesn't make much sense because when people are fighting wars, they're obviously working towards some cause, which when you look back at past wars, you realize that, hey, usually the cause didn't work out how they thought it would, so maybe the Warlord's cause wouldn't have worked out like he thought it would. So it's not really justified, but, I mean, he had a point there.
I mean, even still, if he's taking people from the war, he may be prolonging the war, which may people who may not have even been drafted into the war in the original timeline get drafted and end up dying. So, I mean, his effects aren't just affecting the people he pulls out of the timeline.
Yeah, I mean, it's not really justified, but it's just the point he made.
It's a good point. And then so
but yeah, it's to no avail, he's still guilty.
But his guards show up to try and rescue him, I guess, and they capture the Dr. Zoe and Jamie and force him into the TARDIS to fly away, and Jamie mentions that the Doctor can't fly the TARDIS. And, but he doesn't believe Jamie, obviously, and...
But before they can get there, the Time Lords put up a force field around the TARDIS.
Right, and...
Which...
No, they get inside, and then the Doctor does that flashing light thing, and then they escape out of the TARDIS. Yeah. And then they put the force field around it, trapping the Warlord and the people inside.
Yeah. And then the Warlord and the guards are sentenced to dematerialization.
Basically, it'll be like they never existed.
Yeah.
And then the Time Lords also reveal that they've put a force field up around the Warlord's home planet so that they won't hurt anyone ever again.
Which might be kind of unfair. I mean, yeah, they might just be like a warlike people who would do the same thing as the Warlord, but maybe that was just one faction on their planet going renegade, and I don't know.
Yeah.
It's a little bit unfair in my opinion.
Well, we
don't
know if that planet is the planet the war games were being held on, because if it was, then that would provide justification for the force field. Like, we don't know we know the war games were being held on a different planet that wasn't Earth, but we don't know, like, if that was the home planet of that race.
It still wouldn't have provided justification for the force field if you consider that maybe they had a society on that planet that didn't just revolve around the war games.
True, but I think it's a case of if you let it happen, you're just as bad of a person that they are. So if it happened on their home planet and there was a society that was just like, yeah, they're just a renegade faction, like, I think it's a case of if you're just kind of apathetic about it, then you're just as bad as they are.
Well, maybe the society didn't really know about it, but that's getting into way too many what-if scenarios. Either way, they put up the force field, so there goes that. But then,
Jamie and Zoe are like, so we can leave now, Doctor, and then the Time Lords are like, no, Doctor, you need to stand your trial now.
Yep.
So yeah, he does, and he makes a lot of good points in his defense, actually.
Yeah, I mean, actually, kind of what you were just saying, like the Time Lords are all powerful. They're actually really overpowered. They're control space and time. They're immortal.
Well, they're immortal in the fact that they regenerate, I guess, would be the idea.
They do mention that they can die of they don't die of natural causes, but they can die.
Well, the first Doctor basically dies of old age. Basically, he does get the life force sucked out of him like 3 times during his run, though. So.
No, someone mentions, or I think the Doctor mentions when he's telling Jamie and Zoe that the Time Lords are immortal, that they can die, or I guess be forced to regenerate, maybe is how you can interpret that, if they're killed. I don't know.
Yeah. I guess old age wouldn't really fall under natural causes, I suppose. 'Cause I guess what he means is they don't get sick.
Oh.
Because, I mean, looking at the first Doctor, he does die of, like, just exhaustion, basically.
Yeah. And the regeneration here is a little iffy, but we'll get to that.
If it even is a regeneration, which we will get to.
Yeah, exactly.
So, the Doctor makes a lot of points in his trial that I think are some of the defining moments of his character. He mentions that all his life he's been fighting evil, where the Time Lords have just been sitting idly by watching, and that he thinks it's wrong that the Time Lords don't do anything. And then he brings up a mental projection of some of the people enemies he's faced, which include the Ice Warriors, the Daleks, the Cybermen. He starts with the Quarks.
Yeah, I was like, really, Doctor? You're starting with the fucking Quarks?
The wiki actually mentions that even though that seems a bit weird for someone who only watches the TV show, in the comic series that was running parallel to the TV show, he encountered the Quarks a lot more than just the one episode of the TV show. Okay. Also, apparently the Crotons were supposed to appear in that sequence at the end as an example of a race that subjugated a lower race. But and they even paid Robert Holmes to use the rights for the Crotons, but the costumes were in too bad of a condition to use.
It's interesting.
So the Doctor brings up some of the enemies he's faced, and he said he saved like thousands of lives, and he's toppled like evil regimes that subjugate peaceful people all the time. And I think the exact quote is more elegant than like what I'm giving it, but I'm gonna see if I can find it in this convenient transcript page of the episode.
I don't even know what exact quote you're talking about.
It was the one where like the Time Lords were like, "Do you stand?"
Control F.
Do you stand by what you say? And he says, "I not only stand by it, I'm proud of what I did." Here they say,
that one, yeah.
"You have repeatedly broken our most important law of non-interference in the affairs of other planets. What have you to say? Do you admit these actions?" And the Doctor says, "I not only admit them, I am proud of them. While you have been content merely to observe the evil in the galaxy, I have been fighting against it." Which I think is one of the most powerful quotes of his entire run. Because it not only defines who the Doctor is, but it defines his entire race, as well as what he's been doing. Because every time he shows up, you know, I guess he technically doesn't know where he's going to show up, but if there's an evil there, he'll fight it. But anyway, so the trial resolves. The Time Lords reveal that the Doctor made a lot of good points in his defense, and they need some time to consider what to do with him.
Yeah, so they're gonna keep him in holding for a while, and they do let Jamie and Zoe see him.
Originally, yeah, they were just going to send Jamie and Zoe away, but they let Jamie and Zoe see the Doctor, and they, quote-unquote, accidentally forget to put up the force field around the door. So they're like, "Come on, Doctor, we've been out of tighter scrapes than this, we can go." And the Doctor's like, "Jamie, I don't think so." And Jamie's like, come on. The Doctor's like, "Oh, all right." So they kind of make an escape across some weird, like, chemical pits, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, you kind of knew the Doctor didn't think he could escape at this point.
I think the Doctor was just giving Jamie and Zoe the kind of a lost hurrah type thing before he says goodbye. Because they get to the TARDIS and the Time Lords are waiting there, and they're like, "Did you really think you could escape, Doctor?" And Jamie's like, "Come on, let's go." And the Doctor's like, "No, Jamie, this is the end."
Yep. So that's his goodbye with Jamie.
They say
goodbye, and Jamie says,
"I'll never forget you, Doctor."
And also something way less important that I'm also blanking on. I specifically remembered it when I watched this, or I specifically noted it when I watched this, not in my actual notes, obviously, but that he said something kind of anticlimactic, but I still liked it. I don't remember what it was now, though.
Yeah, the Doctor tells Jamie not to get into any more scrapes, and Jamie's like, "I won't." And then
so he gets into
a side rat, oddly enough.
Yeah.
With a Time Lord, and then immediately after they left, the Doctor's like, "They won't remember me, will they?"
Yeah, Zoe leaves too, by the way.
Yeah, Zoe leaves. Zoe leaves as well, and they have an emotional hug. And then, as Jamie and Zoe are leaving, they kind of hold hands as they head off. And the Doctor's like, "So they won't remember me, will they?" And the Time Lords are like, "They'll remember their first adventure with you, nothing more."
Wow.
Which is really dark and depressing, to be honest.
Yep.
I mean, we'll talk about that when we get to the Jamie and the Doctor retrospective, obviously. But
like that one season of adventures with Zoe and those 3 seasons of adventures with Jamie, yeah, those are all wiped from their memories.
I mean, I guess we can look to the fact that the Doctor at least will remember them. But I think the worst part of this is that they let the Doctor watch when they go back, and then Zoe, when the when the Doctor and Jamie leave, quote unquote, the wheel in space, and Zoe says, "I feel like I've just forgotten something important." Oh well.
Nah.
Yeah, and I'm just like, wow, that would kill the Doctor on the inside, to be honest. And then Jamie,
at least Krakatoa.
At least Jamie gets to go out into this awesome, like a red coat. You think Jamie's gonna die for a second?
It was reused footage from the Highlanders.
Yeah, you think Jamie's gonna die for a second, but he stands up when he chases this red coat with a sword. So at least he gets to go out with a battle cry.
Yeah, was it just me, or did Jamie look? Was Jamie noticeably younger there? Because it was reused footage, and he had been on the show for a couple years.
He wasn't noticeably younger, but I did notice he looked different.
Yeah. It's just kind of an interesting thing I wanted to point out. But honestly, the scene where the Doctor's watching them not remember anything is probably, it's way worse for the viewer than it is for the Doctor or Jamie or Zoe, because I feel like the Doctor was kind of at peace. Like, yeah, they went back to their own time. Now they can live their own lives, even if they don't remember any of our adventures. Meanwhile, Jamie and Zoe, just they don't remember it, so it's like not really going to affect them that much. But it's more impactful on the viewer when you're like, wow, all that stuff I just watched is just not.
I think you realize that they're going to have a good life, and that kind of his sacrifice won't go in vain. Like, they're going to get to at least live a life.
Yeah, it's sort of bittersweet in that respect.
They're going to get to live with where they're used to. They're going to meet their own people.
Unlike Steven.
Hey, audio dramas made Steven's ride out way better. Yeah, so... And then the Time Lords reveal that they're not going to kill the Doctor, to the Doctor's surprise, I guess.
Yeah, they did consider what he said, and they did kind of agree with the fact that he's actually been working for a pretty good cause in most cases. So but they are going to condemn him to Earth until further notice.
They realize that the Doctor's been to Earth a suspiciously large amount of times, and
they do say that he probably knows a lot about it, so that's kind of their justification for them exiling him there, because they do say the word exile. So that's what's going to happen. Like, until further notice, the Doctor...
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, this is just an excuse to have a bunch of cereals set on Earth, but at least there's a storyline reason for it. It doesn't feel too out of the blue.
The Doctor points out that a lot of people on Earth know his face, and they're like, well, you've changed your face once before. And he's like, you can't do that to me. Which is even worse when you find out in the reboot, where the 10th Doctor mentions that regeneration is basically like dying. The old you goes away and a new you shows up.
Well, they do let him choose his new form out of a list they've composed for him.
And he likes none of them. So they're like, well, since you seem to have no choice in the matter, we will choose for you. And it's like, no, I didn't say that. And they're like, it's too late, Doctor.
And there's this weird trippy scene, almost reminiscent of the first episode, kind of.
Yeah, where he's yelling, no.
Not really visually reminiscent, but like it's another trippy scene, so obviously it reminded me of that first episode.
And he's yelling, no.
And eventually it just all fades out.
Yeah.
And that's the end of the second Doctor.
And and the serial ends with the scrolling credits, and you're just like,
wow.
Darn.
Yeah. That's how he goes out. Presumably next season he's gonna look obviously next season.
Obviously he'll look different.
When you're watching it back in the day, you're like, okay, presumably he's gonna look different, and he's gonna be exiled on Earth. So like, wow, that's a sudden change right there.
And we should mention the Time Lords mention that the secret of the TARDIS will be erased from the Doctor's memory.
Right. So obviously he can't just
leave.
Bye, guys.
So I want to make a point that a lot of things in this episode, to me, point out that the Doctor has more control over the TARDIS than he actually likes to let on, and that he actually, I think, intentionally sends it to random places. Because in this episode, 3 times in a row, he escapes the Time Lords to the places he exactly wants to go.
Not really.
Well, he gets into space, which is where he wants to go.
Yeah,
He's able to make the emergency shift. I mean, it doesn't land him where he wants, but that's because the Time Lords are being involved. Plus the fact
that's a good point, actually.
That taking away the secret of the TARDIS would imply that he knows how to pilot it. And I think he just likes to send it random places because it's more exciting. And like he said, he wants to go on adventures. And, with so many places to choose, why choose when you can just let it go wherever it wants?
I guess, yeah, those are some good points, actually. Yeah, that kind of makes sense. Yeah, I interpreted that whole secret of the TARDIS thing as, like, just he won't be able to pilot it anymore.
Yeah.
I mean, like, he won't be able to even use it anymore.
Yeah.
Not that I assumed he was able to control it, but yeah, no, those are some good points actually, and that does make sense. That yeah, it's interesting. I think we should also discuss this regeneration now because we're here.
Yeah.
Yeah, this regeneration was a little iffy, because it wasn't like the previous regeneration. Obviously, this is only the second regeneration I've seen, so I don't know how the other ones are going to play out. But I assume they're more like the first Doctor's regeneration rather than this, where he's being forced to take another form by another being, in this case, the Time Lords. So, like, there's the season 6B theory, and that kind of holds up if you think that this isn't really his regeneration.
Yeah. I mean, the season 6B theory, I read into it a little bit more, obviously because I want to avoid spoilers for any later content. Basically goes that before being exiled to Earth, before regenerating and being exiled to Earth, he gets recruited by this corporation known as the CIA, but it's not the American CIA. It's like the Celestial Intervention Agency, which I guess is like some...
That unfortunate name.
This like, I guess because it has intervention in the name, it goes like against all the Time Lord principles, but I guess it's like some hidden Time Lord thing. Like if you watch Star Trek Deep Space Nine, it's like Section 31. Like some, I don't even know what the term would be, but...
Not a renegade faction, but
like a very hidden faction that they
a
like,
secret society almost.
Yeah, but they make like every effort to keep secret. Like the easiest way to explain it would be related to Section 31 in Star Trek Deep Space Nine. In Deep Space Nine, Star Trek, the Starfleet has Starfleet Intelligence, which is like their secret spy organization, right? But apparently in the Starfleet Charter, or the United Federation's charter, there was a section called Section 31 that allows the United Federation to use any means necessary to do a certain thing. So there's this it's a shadow organization. That was the word I was looking for.
I've never even heard that term before.
That basically Section 31, for all intents and purposes, doesn't exist. But it's like a highly trained group of operatives that like very few people know about. That shows up in Deep Space Nine, which is basically which I imagine is what like the CIA, the Celestial Intervention Agency, is. It's basically like this shadow organization that intervenes in points in history where they think it's important.
Yeah, that's interesting. That kind of holds up. It's a little extravagant, but it holds up when you realize that this regeneration isn't quite like the others.
It isn't quite shown on screen either. I mean, I don't think it would be a spoiler for me to mention that the first time the Third Doctor appears, he just kind of stumbles out of the TARDIS and in his new form and kind of falls down unconscious, probably, post-regeneration trauma. So I don't think it's a spoiler to mention that we don't actually ever see the regeneration happen for the Second Doctor. Which, I mean, yeah, Season 6B theory holds up. It's convenient if you wanted to place fan stories somewhere and you didn't know where to put them. And
you actually care about the timeline for some reason. I guess some people do.
Yeah, I mean,
if I was writing a fan story, I wouldn't really give a crap about the continuity.
Headcanon, I guess. I mean, it's also a convenient place to put in the two Doctors, which shows up in the Sixth Doctor's run. And the Second Doctor shows up with Jamie. So, I think, I don't know. I kind of like the theory, to be honest.
Yeah, it's one of the more interesting and better fan theories that actually holds up.
Yeah. And I mean, it's even like some of the comic strips were specifically set in this Season 6B, quote unquote, which is where the theory originated. Like all the way back when they were still waiting for the Third Doctor. Because the Third Doctor's season is a lot shorter, obviously, so there's a bigger gap in the season. They needed like comic material, and like, where do we put this? So they just kind of threw it in after his regeneration, after the trial, but before his regeneration.
Was there a bigger gap, or did the season just end sooner?
I'm not sure if there was a bigger gap between this season and the next season, but there obviously would have had to have been a bigger gap between the next season, because now the seasons are half as long, so they're going to take up a lot less time over the years. So if they start at the same time all the time, there's going to be that wider gap.
Yeah, well, it's either that the bigger gap comes between 6 and 7 or 7 and 8. It's one or the other.
Yeah.
But I just didn't know which. It's really not that important. But yeah, that's the end of 3 characters all at once.
Which means we have a lot of retrospective to be doing.
What order do you want to do this in? Do you want to talk about Zoe, Jamie, then the Doctor?
Well, we start with the season retrospective because I think that's the least important, then do Zoe, Jamie, the Doctor. Going in order of importance, I guess.
Okay. Yeah, so season 6 is easily the best season of this show so far.
Yes, I most definitely agree. I thoroughly enjoyed this season.
It had only one serial that I can say wasn't good, Space Pirates.
Yeah.
It had the War Games, my favorite serial.
I would agree, actually. I really enjoyed this serial.
And it had The Invasion, another great serial.
Right.
And then there were the other good serials, and then there was the Space Pirates.
Yeah, the Space Pirates is kind of just the black sheep, so to speak. To use an overused cliche.
But yeah, as far as the War Games go, the pacing was pretty great. I don't think there's anything more to say other than what I've said before, where it's slowly revealed to be a bigger, not conspiracy, but it's slowly revealed to there's more at stake than what first appears to be going on. Kind of like the Faceless Ones, my former favorite serial.
I enjoyed this season. I guess the budget has been going up, and
there's definitely a lot more explosions.
Gearing towards trying to increase the production value, I guess, which is a good thing, I think.
And they're going to have to definitely step up costumes and sets next season because it's transitioning to color. You can't just have cardboard robots from the Mind Robber anymore.
Yeah, it's really easy to pull off things in black and white compared to color, because like in color, if the TARDIS has to be blue, but like in black and white, it's hard to tell that it's blue. So if you didn't have blue paint, you could just if you had a paint color that looked similarly shaded that blue did in black and white, you could just kind of pull that off.
Yep.
So that's kind of the season in retrospect. It was a good season, which we've been mentioning as we've been going through it, obviously. Yeah,
there's just a lot of strong serials got okayed for this season, I guess. It was a mess behind the scenes with serials getting reordered, cut down, extended, changed. Somehow it all worked out okay, I guess.
Yeah, it came out pretty good. It introduced a lot of, characters that can be reused. It introduced the concept of the Time Lords. It brought back the Cybermen in a pretty good way.
Yeah, and it brought back Lethbridge Stewart. So because if they hadn't brought him back in The Invasion, it would have been quite a while between his first appearance and next season where he becomes a major character.
Yeah.
So that kind of, I don't want to say reminds you, because it's kind of makes it seem like the viewer is stupid. But it's sort of like, okay, yeah, he's going to be a reoccurring character, or he comes back. So like, hey, it's that character from last season, not like, hey, when did this guy appear?
And I think maybe also it was kind of a lost hurrah for the Brigadier and the Second Doctor. Because, between that and now, I'm assuming the Second Doctor doesn't meet the Brigadier again. And the Brigadier and the Doctor became pretty quick friends in the Web of Fear, and then they were very good friends in the Invasion. So I think they kind of wanted to give him a send-off kind of thing.
I guess.
Like a parting of ways.
Other than that, we had, the Mind Robber was a pretty interesting serial, not something that has been done before. It wasn't really a reused plot line, so to speak. Probably not done again at all.
Yeah.
I don't know about you. The Crotons almost felt like a First Doctor serial to me. I know we were mentioning in our 1 year episode that First Doctor's was more formulaic than the second. And the Crotons felt like something the First Doctor would have been involved with like that type of storyline.
I could see that. I mean, I guess that's kind of okay because compared to season 5, season 6 was way less formulaic than season 5.
Yeah, definitely.
Season 5 was pretty formulaic.
Season 5 was designed to be formulaic.
And, season 6, they went for a lot of kind of, I don't want to say, experimentation, I guess. They did, basically, the serials were all different lengths.
They were going pretty much about different things.
Different stories. They went for a grab bag kind of deal with the different stories, which ended up working out pretty well.
And I liked that, this isn't really related, but I liked that the War Games, sort of the Second Doctor's last hurrah, and also, I mean, essentially the end of a certain era of Doctor Who. It's the end of the black and white era.
Definitely.
The first and second Doctor kind of go together as like that first, the very first era of Doctor Who. So I like that it combined the historical and sci-fi elements that they were originally going for. Obviously, it just evolved into a sci-fi serial when you find out that they're not actually on Earth, but like it did have that historical aspect, which was nice.
And it's a testament to the War Games' good writing. I just want to say it's the only serial where I actively dreaded watching the final 2 episodes because I didn't want Troughton to leave. And Jamie and Zoe, I didn't want any of them to leave. And I didn't realize I liked them so much as characters until that moment where I was like, I didn't realize that I'd become so attached to the characters until that moment. It's this weird effect where you don't realize how attached you become to a certain Doctor until the regeneration scene where they say goodbye. I mean, this happened with 10 and 11 for me. Like, 11 I hadn't really seen as the Doctor because 10 was my first. And then, I didn't realize how attached I'd become to 11 until 11 regenerated. And then again here, which we'll get into more when we get to the second Doctor's retrospective in a couple minutes.
Yeah, but I think on that same note, Zoe.
Yeah, so moving on to Zoe. I liked Zoe. Better than Victoria, to be honest.
Yeah, definitely better than Victoria. Victoria? I did like Victoria. I mainly pointed out during her run that I liked her snarkiness. And she was almost... And she wasn't really comic relief, but she added that element of comedy to some serious scenes, whether intended or not, because of her snarkiness. But Zoe did a lot more, in my opinion, than Victoria.
Zoe gave the Doctor a run for his money a lot of the times.
She's a genius, so...
Yeah, like there were moments where the Doctor wasn't quite sure how to do a thing, and then Zoe was like, oh, I know how to do that.
I know I keep saying this after each new companion scheme, but Zoe, Jamie, and the Doctor is my favorite trio. I said that
I agree. I would vote them the best TARDIS crew so far.
Yep.
Including the reboot, actually, to be honest.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow. Something to look forward to then. Not enjoyable as this.
No, there were good TARDIS crews in the reboot. I just think that Jamie, Zoe, and the second Doctor were better.
It's not going to get any better than this.
Well, we don't know what happens in the classic series. Could be something fantastic.
I'm going to get to my predictions, I guess, when we talk about the second Doctor. But
oh, boy.
Yeah, other than that, Zoe was just an interesting character because there hadn't really been any other characters like her who were like from the future and a genius and like knows tons of crap, often useless. But like her and Jamie were a good dynamic because Jamie's from the past and is usually portrayed as like not being too bright. But
he's bright for what he knows. He just doesn't understand future technology.
I guess, yeah. Meanwhile, Zoe is just like, what are you doing, Jamie? So I liked that. A lot of funny scenes.
Yeah, they played off each other pretty well. I mean, and that goes along with why I'd say that the best TARDIS crew is just because the whole dynamic between the three of them works a lot better than that dynamic in like the reboot, because the reboot basically it's almost always a 2-person TARDIS. The only exception being the 11th Doctor, Amy and Rory. And I think, how do I want to say this without insulting tons of fans, I didn't like Rose or Martha because they spent their entire time just falling in love with the Doctor, and it's like, I don't care. I'm not here for a love story.
Yeah. I was actually just about to say something on that note. I'm kind of dreading when it gets to like romance between the Doctor and the companions, because
and that's why I'd say like Donna Noble is my favorite companion of the reboot, because she's got that snarky attitude that I know you're gonna love. You're gonna love Donna when we get there. I can tell she's snarky, and she just all these sarcastic comments towards the Doctor. It's amazing. I'd say she's the second best TARDIS crew, so you have that to look forward to.
Yeah.
when she meets the Doctor for the second time, the Doctor's like, "I'm just looking for a mate," and she's like, "Well, you're not mating with me, honey." So.
Yeah. So that's goodbye to Zoe.
I think she got a good ride out. I mean, as well as Jamie. This is probably the best companion ride out so far. I mean, the saddest, obviously, but I think in that aspect, that probably makes it the best for you to remember all these things about the characters and evoke all these emotions about the characters.
Yep.
In
just
this
kind
is the
of
best.
Thinking about it, this is the best.
Ian and Barbara still probably second.
Yeah.
With Susan. Susan maybe second.
something like that.
I'd say Susan probably second, then Ian and Barbara third. And then everyone else, it just doesn't even matter because they just kind of went lol. Except Victoria, I'd put Victoria fourth.
No, yeah, at least she had a reason. Ben and Polly also were kind of like, they just took the opportunity. You can't blame them for wanting to leave when they did. Kind of the same thing as
you can't blame them
Barbara.
for taking away out when they saw it.
Yeah, because like if they hadn't, who knows when they would have gotten the chance. But yeah, this was definitely the best write out. And I'm glad that the second Doctor ended on such a high note, which I guess we should transition into Jamie before that.
Right.
But
so this is going to be a serious retrospective because Jamie's been here basically the whole of the second Doctor's run, except for the Power of the Daleks, which is the one with the Doctor and Ben and Polly. Yep. And then the very next serial was the Highlanders.
Yep. So Jamie is the...
You can't talk about the second Doctor without talking about Jamie.
Essentially,
I think is what you want to say.
And I also wanted to say that in all of Doctor Who, classic and reboot, Jamie, other than the Doctor, Jamie is probably the single most appearing character. That's worded terribly, but I don't think anyone else appears more than Jamie. Except like the Daleks, maybe.
I think episodes-wise, you're correct, but I think if you counted each serial as a singular appearance, I think Sarah Jane Smith beats Jamie.
Huh. Yeah, I do know Jamie is the only companion to go over 100 episodes traveling with the Doctor.
I think at least that Sarah Jane Smith meets the most incarnations of the Doctor.
Huh.
Because Sarah Jane travels with the fourth Doctor, and then I think she meets at least the fifth and sixth, and she also meets the 10th in the reboot. So, or maybe even the Brigadier meets the most incarnations, because we already know he's going to have met 2.
Yeah.
Next week.
Yeah, but Jamie, wow.
Jamie had a lot of cool quips with the Doctor.
And that comes just from the sheer fact that they were together for so long.
Yeah. They became very close over their run, I think. And I think it was... I don't want to say the Doctor didn't care that Zoe was leaving, but I think he cared more that Jamie was leaving, considering he had traveled for Jamie for so long.
Yeah, and just look at the goodbye he shared with Jamie as compared to the one with Zoe. I mean,
that's not to say he didn't care about Zoe leaving. He was... Yeah, obviously he was upset that Zoe was leaving too, because he'd become pretty attached to Zoe as well in her time in the TARDIS, but...
Yeah, he does for everyone. I mean, look at Victoria, but Jamie, wow.
And that's why I think the whole fake escape at the end was kind of put on by either the Time Lords or the Doctor. I think the Doctor knew he wasn't going to get away.
Yeah, he definitely knew.
And I think he just wanted to kind of give them...
He didn't want to show them that he'd given up.
He wanted to put on a strong face for them. And... even in the end there, when Jamie is talking to the Doctor and he's like, if anyone's coming for you, Doctor, let me at him.
Started to tear up a little bit there. Not gonna lie.
Actually, it was... Because it was like, the whole time, the Doctor... Every time someone's in trouble, the Doctor's like, I will save you. Like, if Jamie's in trouble, he's like, I'm not leaving you, Jamie. I'm not leaving until I get Jamie or Zoe or Victoria or anyone back. And in the end, it turns around and Jamie's like, I'm not leaving without the Doctor.
Yep.
And it's just like, oh, but
he's gonna go out.
He has to, and you just don't want him to go.
Yep. And I didn't want the second Doctor to leave. I wanted Troughton to stay on more, but we'll get into that. I also didn't want Jamie to go out. Jamie like we were saying before, second or first favorite character, like tied with the Second Doctor for me right now. And
companions-wise, he's my favorite companion.
Yeah, he's definitely my favorite companion. And this might sound bad, but that might just be due to the sheer fact that he was here for so long. So obviously, the longer someone's there, the more you grow attached to them. But he was pretty awesome, and
he did a lot of cool things. He earned his keep, so to speak. He didn't kind of just like hang around and just tag along like Barbara did. He did what he needed to do to be there. He made himself known.
Yeah, there were barely any serials where we were like, Jamie was that useless character. Then again, there are barely any serials like that anymore. They've gotten way better about that since the first Doctor, but
that's
still.
Probably just coming with the 3-person TARDIS instead of the 4-person Ian, Barbara, Susan, and the Doctor type thing.
Yeah.
I mean, like we mentioned when Susan left, Ian and Barbara started doing more, and then Vicky was kind of eh.
Yeah, I mean,
I think
possibly
just the 4-person TARDIS kind of trap where it's like it's hard to make 4 unique characters that all do something.
Yeah, and I guess the writers realize that because they're not really doing that anymore. I also wanted to say, on the one hand, I didn't want Jamie to go out here, but in one sense, I'm kind of glad he did, because, like you were saying, you can't really imagine the Second Doctor without Jamie. But on the other hand, I can't really imagine Jamie traveling with anyone other than the Second Doctor.
Yeah.
So if he had stayed into the Third Doctor's run, that would have just, I mean, it would have impacted him, because the Doctor is different. Presumably, he would have come to terms with it somehow, because it's still a Doctor, however different he is. But at the same time, it would just be so weird watching Jamie with someone other traveling with another Doctor.
Yeah. And I think we mentioned this when we were talking about the first 5 episodes of the serial, that Jamie deserved a good ride out. Just by the sole virtue of having been there so long and been so intertwined with the Second Doctor's life. And, in the end, he got it.
Yeah.
And I'm glad that... I mean, I'm sad that he left, but I'm glad that he went out with such a good kind of episode.
With Krakatoa.
Yeah. And he got to charge at a red coat at the end. Sorry. And kind of, give it his all in the end, even when the Doctor's not there.
Yeah, I remember when we watched the Highlanders, I was like, Krakatoa? What? And then that's how it all ends, too.
Brought it full circle. Jamie.
Yeah.
Sad to see him go.
I don't know if this is true or not. I don't, because I haven't read anything supporting or denying this. It's just a singular fact I read somewhere that Fraser Hines was the one who decided to leave the show. Mm-hmm. So I don't know whether that was like a coincidence, like, oh, well, we're going to get written out anyway.
What I read was that he actually wanted to leave like 3 weeks before. And we can talk about, this will lead into a discussion about that other proposed write-out that we had mentioned back in the Web of Fear that we said we'd only talk about when Jamie left. But Fraser Hines had meant to leave earlier in the season, but Patrick Troughton had been like, I'm leaving at the end of the season because I think the workload is too much and I'm just kind of burned out. Like, stay till the end of the season with me, and we'll leave together. So Fraser was kind of like, okay, I'll stay till the end of the season, and then we'll leave at the same time. Which,
that's it. I wonder if Troughton and Hines were like friends.
Yeah, apparently they became real good friends behind the scenes, and they like to play practical jokes. Like when Victoria was leaving, they were really upset that Victoria was leaving, and they kind of threw her into the foam at one point during the filming. And they became, friends behind the scenes, which I guess is just, they were there for so long working on the show together.
Yeah. And that's interesting. Their ages are so different, too. Like,
yeah. And so anyway, when Fraser had announced that he was planning on leaving, I already told Kiyan about this proposed write-out, but basically, I can't remember who wrote The Abominable Snowman and The Web of Fear now, but they were planning to write a third Yeti serial. And that would have been Jamie's write-out, and would have occurred early into season 6, and it was going to be called The Laird of McCrimmon. And basically, the outline of the plot that is surfaced at this point was that they would have, the Doctor, Jamie, and whoever was traveling with him at the time would have ended up in Scotland, in before or around Jamie's time, and the Laird McCrimmon would have been in charge of a castle, and the Yeti would have shown up, and Jamie would have had a ride out that would have basically involved him falling in love with someone in Scotland, as well as the Laird being killed, leaving Jamie as the final surviving McCrimmon, so he stays behind to take up the title of the Laird, and then he ends up marrying the person he falls in love with there, and they leave him there. And when I told Kiyan this, he was like, wow, you shouldn't have told me that, because now Jamie's ride out's never going to live up to that.
Yeah, that sounded really good to me. Honestly, revisiting that thought, I think this is better.
I agree.
Because I like bittersweet stuff as messed up as that might be.
Well, I mean, it's not better just for the fact that it was bittersweet. It's better for the fact that it was this epic 10-part thing, and then the second Doctor and Jamie left at the same time.
And Zoe.
And Zoe, but like, because the Doctor and Jamie have been so intertwined that they leave at the same time, as well as the fact they kind of had their final hurrah, and, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, the other one could have been good too if it was written well. Kind of another situation of if they have a chance to leave, take it type thing.
Yeah.
Which I wouldn't have faulted the writers for doing that again, but I think this is better.
Yeah.
Played out better, and I think that serial fell through not only because Frasier decided to stay on till the end of the season with Troughton, but also I think there was a falling out with the rights for the Yeti. So the serial never came to be. But it would have been interesting in another world where Jamie leaves in the middle of season 6. But yeah.
Yeah, so that's Jamie. That's
Mr. Frasier Hines.
Favorite companion.
Still acts in the audio dramas as Jamie. Does a very good Troughton impression, I've heard.
Huh.
I haven't heard the actual impression, but I've heard he does a very good Patrick Troughton. Because, he's older now. His voice has kind of deepened since when he played Jamie.
Yeah, of course.
So I remember watching an interview where he was like, he has to make his voice higher when he's talking as Jamie because his voice isn't as high as it used to be, and he has to make his voice lower when he's talking as the Doctor. So his voice kind of falls in the middle of the two of them now.
Makes sense.
Yeah. So Troughton, the second Doctor. This is it. He's done. I mean, except for the audio dramas and a lot of the prose, there's probably novels starring him too. Extended universe stuff.
All the fan fiction.
And probably fan fiction, yes.
Probably fan fiction.
Well, okay, fine.
He's a doctor. Come on. I don't know how else to start this other than saying that I liked him a lot more than the first Doctor.
Yeah.
When we did the first Doctor retrospective, we had sort of a list like favorite scenes, favorite enemies, favorite lines. We have that here too, but I want to just talk in general about him first, essentially.
Yeah, this will probably be less structured than the first Doctor's one was, but
yeah,
we do have thoughts we want to get out that we have written down that we want to make sure we mention. So
yeah, overall, I'd say second Doctor was a lot more interesting than the first Doctor. Because on the one hand, he did sort of have that cranky old man personality at times. But then at other times, he was very active, involved, and interested in situations where the first Doctor might not have been as involved in. Which made for an interesting character because... it just did.
Well, I think... he was a lot more active than the first Doctor was. I think that's just, I guess, because the actor was just young enough to be more active than Hartnell was.
And just the way Troughton acted.
Just old enough to look old-ish.
And I mean, that you can see that right when the first Doctor appears, right in the beginning of... An
Unearthly Child?
Did I say first? I meant second.
Power of the Daleks?
Yes. Where he's reading the diary or whatever, and he's walking around the acid pits in a comedic manner. Obviously, we didn't see it; it was a reconstruction. But yeah, he, like I was saying before, way earlier in this same episode, he brings that comedic factor to the show, which the first Doctor might have brought in the sense that he was a cranky old man. That's kind of funny, but like Troughton's acting is just comedic in itself.
Yeah, and I think he did a lot more naturally than they tried to do with the first Doctor, because if you'll remember, like, the Romans, the one where they accidentally burned down Rome, which tried to be comedic, and it just failed, so to speak.
It came through at times.
It had its moments of brilliance, but overall it was just not.
Yeah.
But I think because Troughton was just... he more naturally was kind of that... He had a different acting style than Hartnell, and I think just that naturally lent itself to be more comedic. And not only that, I think the character of Jamie... like, Jamie is an integral part of why the show was funny, because the Doctor and Jamie had a lot of banter back and forth, and a lot of situations...
A lot of in-jokes.
Yeah, between them were humorous. I mean, like, when Jamie finds the bagpipes, like, you didn't tell me you had these, Doctor. I could fix these and play them. And the Doctor's like, I was afraid of that. You know, things like that. Like, just little moments where they're... You know, moments in the TARDIS where they're not in, like, peril.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
What else about the second Doctor? I'd place him as probably my third favorite Doctor, actually.
After?
10 and 12. 10 and 12, I haven't decided who I like better. Because
you can't put 12 on the list. He's not done yet.
You don't have to be. You don't have to be done with a Doctor to like him.
But you can't put him on your list yet.
Yes, I can.
He can fall to crap, as far as we know, after starting with next season. It's totally possible.
Yeah, but I can still like him for his first season. People still like the Sixth Doctor for his flashes of brilliance. You can still like a Doctor even if overall you think even if overall most people think he was terrible. You can still like him for like the moments that he had that were good.
I agree with that. I just don't agree with putting him on your list before he's done.
Mm-hmm. You said you liked the second Doctor before the first, before we were done.
But it wasn't on my list.
You had two people on your list. Your list could only have two people.
My list was still composed of the first Doctor in first place and no one else.
Yeah, no.
Fine. Yeah, but obviously my list only has two people, and second Doctor is first. First Doctor is second. Interestingly enough.
We shall see how that changes for the next 10 Doctors.
Yeah. I'm like I said before, I want to talk about my predictions and expectations after we talk about Troughton.
Predictions, expectations. So
yeah, do you want to go into our list of things, favorite scenes, lines, stuff like that?
Let's talk about scenes that just stand out in general, I guess, whether or not they're our favorite scenes or not.
The one in Tomb of the Cybermen between the Doctor and Victoria.
Yeah.
That was kind of like the speech to Susan of the second Doctor, almost. Where he tells her that she should, like, I think he says something along the lines of that she should always, like, remember her happy memories with her dad and try not to let it overtake her life, like, just try not to let the misery sink in too much, I guess, which is a nice sentiment, I suppose.
Yeah, no, I think it was one of the defining moments of the second Doctor. Like how Susan's speech was one of the moments where we went, okay, so this is the Doctor saying what he is, you know? He makes people's lives better, and then when he knows he's done, type thing. You know, and this was the moment in the second Doctor where you're like, okay, this is who the second Doctor is.
In that same sense, or that same line of thought, I wanted to put this question out there because it's something I was thinking about. Over the course of the first Doctor's run, part of his character development was that he sort of started trusting his companions a lot more, especially Ian.
Yeah.
And I remember back at the beginning of the second Doctor, we were like, maybe that's going to continue, because I remember in some of the second Doctor's first serials, he almost reverted back to how the first Doctor originally was, where he tried to do everything on his own. And honestly, I kind of think that he became more of that, or like the first Doctor's character development was almost undone with the second, and he didn't really develop back into the trust he had, like when he was.
Well, I'd say it kind of almost reversed. Instead of him having to learn to trust his companions, I'd say it almost became the companions learning to trust him.
Yeah.
I mean, basically for his whole run, he was telling his companions to trust him and that he would get them out no matter what.
Yeah, and even at the end, though, even in his final serial, he would pull the whole "I don't have time to explain" thing, which is something I know I wanted him to be part of his character development. It doesn't like flat out ruin it for me, but it's interesting that they didn't go that route. I know I've been disappointed by things I thought would happen and didn't before, but I really actually did think they were going to go with something like this, but they didn't. So yeah, I think that's really my one negative point about the Second Doctor. And like, it's not enough to ruin his brilliance.
Brilliance is a powerful word.
It's true.
When you've only seen 2 Doctors, brilliance is a strong word to throw around.
Maybe there are other Doctors I'll like better, but I'm not there yet. And I doubt they're going to appear in the classic series because I assume that just falls to crap after now. But
well, they keep the 4th Doctor on for 7, 8 seasons, 7 years. You know, 4th and 3rd Doctor are both basically universally beloved as well. The Second Doctor less so because a lot of his episodes are reconstructions, and a lot of people are like, I'll just start with the color era, so I'll start with the 3rd Doctor. I think the 2nd Doctor's probably fallen out of favor just by virtue of the fact that not many people watch the 1st and 2nd Doctor's era episodes.
It's unfortunate, but I can't blame people for skipping reconstructions, honestly.
Yeah.
I mean, on the one hand, I'm like, what are you doing? Watch it, but can't.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, we were talking about favorite lines.
Oh boy. I think I know where this is going. I'm waiting for
I'll talk about that in a minute, but a few others from the 2nd Doctor I liked were, now let's see if we can bluff our way out of here. It's pretty good. That was in this serial, actually.
There was the bagpipe line.
Yeah, all those funny quips with everyone.
The recorder line was like, you didn't let me bring it.
Oh, we didn't talk about the recorder.
Well, we're in the retrospective, so we can talk about the recorder now.
Yeah. Well, when it first showed up, I remember I was like, this is going to be really annoying. It's going to show up every serial. He's going to play it. It's going to have some plot device-y related thing going on with it, and it's just going to annoy me, but it hardly ever showed up.
And then you ended up missing it in the end, right?
Kind of.
Yeah, see? Because, like, the 1st Doctor's trademark was him going, all the time, and he kind of stopped doing that near the end, and we did it less. And then, the 2nd Doctor, I would still argue that his trademark is still the recorder, even though it didn't appear as much. I'd say that of all the things that he had, it appeared the most.
He used the sonic screwdriver more. I know that's not, like, Doctor exclusive, but it first appeared at the 2nd. He used
the sonic screwdriver 4 times that I can remember.
He used the recorder twice.
No, he used it a lot more. He used it in his first serial to escape the audio lock. He mentioned it in the one with the doppelganger, the Enemy of the World. He used it in the first 3 serials. He used it in the Highlanders when he was captured.
It was there, but he didn't.
No, he played it when he was waiting in the barn for Polly to come back.
Wasn't that wasn't integral to the plot?
No, but he still used it. It still appeared.
Okay, I'm not counting I guess I sort of count the appearances, and when it was integral is sort of differently. I don't know. Mm-hmm. I felt that there was going to be a plot device a lot more than it actually was. But yeah, it's just me. I guess in the same sense that the 1st Doctor going was never used as in a plot related way, but yeah, that's the recorder.
Goodbye, recorder.
Did you think it was going to get annoying?
No.
No, it was just kind of there.
Yeah.
All right.
And yeah. Oh well.
So there were definitely some other great lines from the 2nd Doctor's run. Particularly my favorite line from the entire show so far. Not surprisingly enough, not one of the 2nd Doctor's lines, and not one of his companions' lines either. It's actually an Enemy of the World, the chef, probably one of my favorite characters on the show. But this line, you can't deny the brilliance of this line, and this is true brilliance.
Not even.
Come on.
No.
Tonight's dinner is going to be a national disaster. Best line on the show, easily. And his delivery of it was perfect. He should have been a companion. If they wrote out Jamie during Enemy of the World and replaced him with the chef, I would have been totally okay with it.
No,
I probably wouldn't have, but...
Now, the best lines in the show for me still stand in the reboot when the Daleks meet the Cybermen.
Did you spoil that before?
No.
I don't remember if you did.
No.
Okay.
But when they meet, they have this amazing witty banter that I could spoil here, which it has no integral part to the plot.
It's up to you.
No, I won't.
Okay.
But it's funny, and I liked it. It's the best written dialogue in the whole show, in my opinion. So there.
Yeah, so
I totally thought of a good Second Doctor quote like a minute ago that I wanted to mention, but I don't remember it now. Because
this episode is just full of blanking.
Yeah.
Move
okay.
on
So
to
anyway.
like best enemies of the Second Doctor.
Ice Warriors.
No.
First one I wrote down. Ice Warriors.
Really? Are you serious?
Ice Warriors. Ice Warriors.
Like, are you actually serious? Like,
Yes.
you liked them?
Yes.
Why?
They had the okay. Their first appearance was pretty weak, and to be honest,
Yeah.
I wouldn't count that among the best heroes. But their second appearance, they had probably one of the best motivations for invading a planet. You know, their planet is dying, and they're just like, let's just move over to this other inhabited planet, and just wipe them out instead of like moving to our own moon or like any other uninhabited planet in the solar system.
Well, I guess it also makes sense when you think that like Mars is the most similar planet in the solar system to Earth. But
Yeah,
on the other
yes.
hand, Cybermen did it first. Cybermen did it better. They failed hard. They failed harder.
That doesn't mean they did it better. They did it worse then. Because
The storyline was better.
they completely misaccounted for the fact that they were going to blow up in like a lot sooner than they like originally intended. The Cybermen were just terribly incompetent in their first appearance.
That same can be said for the Ice Warriors, but
Yeah, but in the Moon one with the Seeds of Death, they weren't.
I still
Because instead of deciding to capture and kill everyone like the Cybermen tried to do, they decided they would just terraform Earth into Mars while they're all on it, and then all just get killed off in the process.
still weren't too interesting.
The Ice Warriors are good villains. They come from Mars. They're the only alien species so far to come from within our solar system, which makes them the only species that can be truly horrifying. Because like, what if they actually exist? Because
That's not true.
Yes, it is.
The Daleks
They're like
can
right
be truly
there.
horrifying.
Yeah, but the Ice Warriors have that ability to actually exist and be within a stone's throw, so to speak.
Yeah, Mars is a stone's throw away.
Cosmically speaking, it is.
Yeah, but then like when you're going about your everyday life, you're not like, Mars is pretty close.
7 years travel. That's closer than anywhere else. Except maybe Venus.
Except like anywhere on this planet.
Yeah, but we're talking about a show about a time traveler who traveled through space.
I still like the Cybermen as the Second Doctor's.
Well, I had the Cybermen
villains.
second.
Yeah. I'm counting them as Second Doctor villains because they got really fleshed out during the Second Doctor and appeared a lot more than they did with the first, which was only one appearance.
And then got written out for another 10 years or whatever it was.
Yeah.
8.
Actually, the Second Doctor's era did the Daleks justice as well.
They only appeared twice.
Those were pretty good serials, though.
Yeah.
Power and Evil.
Evil of the Daleks. Power of the Daleks.
Other than that, we had a Second Doctor lookalike in Salamander.
Done way better than Massacre of St. Bartholomew's Eve.
And the War Chief, definitely. Even though we just watched him, he definitely stands out. He's the first, well,
he's the second
rival Time Lord, but the first, like, good rival Time Lord. Let's be honest, the monk, he just devolved into a comic relief character.
Which is a shame. He had such potential.
Yeah, but then the War Chief took over that potential, carried the torch for the monk.
I read that in some prose it was implied that the monk, the master, the war chief, and the Ronnie, which is another renegade Time Lord who appears there, were all different regenerations of the same Time Lord, and then, which doesn't make any sense because it's immediately disproven by actual TV canon.
All right.
So there's that theory for you. Maybe you believed in your head canon. I don't know. Oh, I remember that other quote I wanted to mention was the silly quote about the drawing pins in the Space Pirates when they fall into the pit and they're like, "You have drawing pins?" And he's like, "I like drawing pins." Oh, well, I used to.
Yeah, also in this serial, I think Zoe questions the Doctor on why he stole a TARDIS, and he's like, "Well, I was bored."
That's a pretty good reason.
That sums up, honestly, that's a funny line, but it sums up the Doctor's entire character so well.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, such a simple line that it embodies such a complex character.
Okay, yeah. I had favorite companions on the list. Obviously, Jamie.
Yeah, like, Ben and Polly still feel. Ben and Polly are in this weird situation where it's like, I don't know whether to count them as first or second Doctor companions, and counting them as both feels wrong.
They weren't with either Doctor for too long, to be honest. Maybe it just feels that way because they were there for, like, I guess a similar amount of time to other companions, but half of it was with the first Doctor and half was with the second, so it just feels weird.
It feels weird to count them with either. They kind of just bridge companions. They kind of there to bridge the transition between Hartnell and Troughton.
They're not really. I'm not really going to remember them all that much.
Yeah, there's probably someone who's like, my favorite companion was Polly. And you know what? More power to you. Everyone's entitled to their opinion. I don't think I'm going to remember Polly too much, or Ben, given what they did on the show and how long they were there for.
Yeah. I also have interaction with Jamie on this list. We got into that.
We covered that.
Favorite locations or sets?
London Underground.
I guess. Yeah, we discussed that in its serial, but yeah, I'm coming around to London Underground actually as a set, and I don't know, the invasion was interesting.
Yeah.
With the whole like camp for they could have gone into that more. It's not really what they were going for, but the work camp, it wasn't really a work camp, but it was like where they were keeping the workers or where they were housed or something. I don't know.
Gotta give credit to this show for making 2 moon bases that look entirely different. In the moon base and then in the Seeds of Death.
Oh, yeah.
Good on you and not just like reusing an old design, which would have been a cop-out and wouldn't have made sense timeline-wise because you'd assume like technology would progress and they'd redesign the base. So, yeah.
T-Mat.
My favorite comment I've written down during the second Doctor's run is still, why would you link the world's food supply to T-Mat in all caps?
Oh, that reminds me of another, this wasn't really a quote, but now that reconstructions are done, this is my favorite reconstruction text, which is the doctor messes with the control panel randomly, causing it to explode. It's another memorable moment from the second Doctor.
Second Doctor, why?
But yeah, the War Games also is a very memorable setting. Maybe the set's not all that interesting, but it doesn't need to be. It's like it's a generic base.
Outside filming for generic hills for generic Roman war.
But like how it's all connected and all that was pretty great. And there's one other I wanted to mention, and like tons of other things in this episode, I'm completely blanking on it.
It's like it's just the Time Lords affecting your memory. They didn't want you to really remember the regeneration,
I guess.
So the wiping your memory.
It's like the memory wiping thing at the end of Space Jam 2.
There was a second Space Jam?
Yeah, it just has a memory wiping thing at the end, so nobody remembers it.
What? I haven't even seen the first Space Jam, to be honest.
There's no second Space Jam. It's just like...
I caught on to the joke. Okay. I was playing along.
All right. I didn't think you were.
But actually, I haven't watched Space Jam.
Yeah, me neither. I've probably... Okay, I'm not going to get into that, but... Yeah. Yeah, that's...
Yes?
Evil of the Daleks, I also really liked the setting, how it went from 20th century to 19th century to Skaro. That was interesting in my opinion.
To Skaro. Again, interesting. They did a good job of making Skaro look different too, like it had progressed since the first Doctor's run. They could have just been like, here's some production photos, redesign this, guys.
They probably, yeah, I guess.
I mean, they probably took those for inspiration.
Probably wasn't much more or less work than
Yeah.
Presumably they didn't have the set from way back when. So I don't think it would have been like the same amount of work to either recreate the set or create something slightly different. So they went for the slightly different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess a good way to wrap up the retrospective would be to talk about, we've been talking a lot over these series about how the second Doctor seems to mention his home and not being able to go there for his whole run.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if they were going for foreshadowing for this. I'm not sure how far back they knew that the Doctor would encounter his own people in his regeneration. But it's definitely something to consider that
it comes up a lot.
Yeah, that it comes up a lot, and that in the final episode, the Doctor mentions that he ran away, which, if you'll remember, when Stephen Taylor leaves and the first Doctor has that breakdown, he's like, I can't go home, it's explained finally. I mean,
I doubt they were going for it that far back with the first Doctor,
but you probably wouldn't even remember that happened if you watched this when it was airing. But
yeah,
it's that's explained now why he can't go home. So I'm sure some people were curious, and the fact that he keeps bringing it up, like when Ben and Polly left, he's like, take this opportunity to leave because I never got to go home.
Yeah.
And with Victoria, like, I still remember my friends and family, even though I don't see him anymore.
Mm-hmm.
It was kind of a recurring theme, and I think it was a good plan.
Yeah.
Whether or not it was intentional to wrap it up nicely at the end of his run with the War Games, and then to kind of, explain why he hasn't been able to come home. Originally, maybe you assumed it was because he had no control over the TARDIS, but, it's actually revealed that he ran away and stole the TARDIS, so going home was kind of never an option for him, even if he does, as I like to pretend, that he actually has more control over his TARDIS than he lets on.
Yeah, hopefully with the third Doctor they go for some sort of overarching thing like that too. That'd be interesting.
Well, he is in exile, so I'm presuming there will be some thing pertaining to his exile over his run. I mean, he's not exiled for the whole rest of the classic series, so we know he gets unexiled at some point. But when that happens, I'm assuming
when and how
that's gonna play out over the third Doctor's run, maybe even into the fourth.
I don't know.
I don't think they'll drag it out too long.
I don't know how long it is season wise either. I don't know if it's like the entire run of the third Doctor, one season. I don't know how.
I don't think they drag it out for any more than the third Doctor's run anyway. I mean, I guess we're getting into expectations for the third Doctor now. I don't think they're going to drag out the exile plot line too long, just because I think it stagnates the show, so to speak, because there's only so much you can do with the Doctor being on Earth in one place and explaining away why all these aliens happen to be attacking Earth within a span of like a couple years.
Yeah, that's true. That is true.
So
it's happened before, kind of the Yeti and
yeah,
Cybermen.
but I mean, if they drag it out for any more than a couple seasons, it'll be like in a span of 3 years, Earth will have been invaded 4, 8, 12 times just over 3 seasons in the 3 years. So. It's kind of like, and we know the monster shows up in the third Doctor's run, so that whether or not that plays into his exile, I don't know. Maybe it does. Maybe it doesn't. Maybe the monster tries to invade Earth with an army of ice warriors.
That would be certainly interesting.
It would be unique.
I hope the ice warriors don't show up again.
But they were good villains. We mentioned that good serials include memorable villains, but that doesn't mean the villains have to be good, Memorable villains can be bad, and they're memorable for the fact that they're bad.
I'm not saying that they're bad. I'm just saying that they were just okay. Like in the first serial they appeared in, they were pretty bad. In Seeds of Death, they were just okay.
Well, they come back in the audio dramas, as does the second Doctor.
Yeah, of course. Who doesn't come back in the audio dramas? Oh, right, the War Chief.
Poor old War Chief. They even bring back the monk in the audio dramas. Like, really?
Yeah.
And apparently the monk storyline is really dark because he kills one of the Doctor's companions.
Oh.
The monk allies with the Daleks, attempts to invade Earth, and at the end, the Doctor is unable to save one of his companions from the monk or from the Daleks.
Because allying with the Daleks worked so well the first time for the monk.
Worked really well this time. They kill one of his companions. So I've heard. I have not listened to the audio drama. I have only read the monk's page on the wiki, so take everything I say with a grain of salt.
I wonder when we're going to get the first companion kill. Well, except for Katarina. She killed herself. But I wonder when that's going to happen. Maybe sometime in the third Doctor's run. I don't know.
Just watch the Brigadier die in the next episode, the next serial, and then all of his other appearances are like out of order, pre him dying type thing. That happens in the reboot. You get a character named with a song. The first time you meet her...
no, I know all of this, and dies. I don't want to get into that complicated mess of stuff until I need to.
You can blame Stephen Moffat for that.
I think that about wraps up season 6, the second Doctor, and...
Jamie and Zoe.
Yep.
We are entering and the black and white era, and the era of reconstructions, and the era of animation. Basically, this is an end of an era. If you are listening to this episode, you are witnessing an end of an era for Trust Your Doctor, as well as the beginning of a brand new one.
A probably worse one.
What? Wow, you have no faith in not only the show, but as well as ourselves.
I guess. Yeah. So,
email us at thedoctor@decorativevegetable.com.
Tell us how you liked the second Doctor.
Exactly
Sorry.
what I was going to say.
Oh.
No. Yeah.
Whoops.
No, yeah, I don't mind. So check us out on YouTube.
Whoops.
This is a video episode, which we didn't even mention at the beginning, but now you've got to the end and you're like, oh, that was a video episode.
If you didn't notice by now.
So, whoops. But yeah, this is a video episode. Hopefully. We'll explain that and never. Check us out on iTunes at Trust Your Doctor. Leave a rating if you liked it. Yesterday, in terms of when this episode goes out, our year special will have gone out, which was also a video episode, which we recorded just before this episode. And check out the website at decorativevegetable.com. There's a link on there to a page called Cool Links, and that's where we put any and all cool Doctor Who things we find, and that currently includes a site that includes production information for any of the serials if you're curious, for things we kind of glossed over. You
can read about season 6's horrible behind-the-scenes work.
Yep, as well as a link to a PDF about reconstructions. So if you're curious about that, that is there, and I'm planning on adding more links there. Probably a link to the wiki as well, since we reference that a lot. And
yeah.
I think maybe just to help people find it, we'll put it up there, as well as I'll put a link to the site I use for transcripts, because maybe some people want to read the quotes we're talking about.
Mm-hmm. Check out Facebook. Like us on Facebook. Obviously, you can find that at Trust Your Doctor. But yeah, next week we start Color and the third Doctor and season 7. So until then, the end.